Howdy folks, and welcome back to our channel. Ever heard of a cowboy so tough he could ride a tornado like a bucking bronco, or a filly so wild he was raised by coyotes? Well, pull up a seat and get ready for a story that's as big and bold as the American West itself. Today, we're diving into the legendary tale of Pecos Bill, the king of all cowboys. Now, the story goes that Pecos Bill wasn't born in a hospital. Oh no, he was born in East Texas in the 1830s, and right from the start, he was different. They say as a baby, he used a Bowie knife for a teething ring, and played with wild animals like they were house cats. His family was tough, but even they couldn't keep up with the ever-expanding frontier. When Bill was just a toddler, they decided to move west because the area was getting too crowded. On their journey across the Pecos River, disaster struck. Little Bill fell out of the covered wagon and was swept away by the current. His family, thinking he was lost forever, continued their journey with heavy hearts. But Bill was a survivor. He washed ashore and was found by a pack of coyotes. Now, you might think that's the end of the story, but for Pecos Bill, it was just the beginning. The coyotes took him in and raised him as one of their own. He learned to howl at the moon, to hunt, and to speak the language of the desert creatures. For years, he ran with the pack, believing he was a coyote himself. He was strong, fast, and completely wild. One day, a real cowboy stumbled upon this strange, long-haired man running on all fours with the coyotes. The cowboy was stunned. He told Bill, "You ain't no coyote. You're a human." Bill, of course, didn't believe him at first. To prove it, the cowboy pointed out that Bill didn't have a tail. Well, that settled it. After a long look at his tailless behind, Bill realized the truth. He said goodbye to his coyote family and decided to rejoin the human world. It was time for Pecos Bill to become a cowboy. And what a cowboy he became. He didn't just learn the ropes, he invented them. They say Pecos Bill invented the lasso, or the lariat, using a giant rattlesnake he taught cowboys how to herd cattle and even invented the whole idea of the cattle drive. His skills were legendary. He was the best shot, the best rider, and the toughest man west of the Mississippi. He was so tough, he once used a mountain lion as a horse, and it was a pretty wild ride, I can tell you that. But every legendary cowboy needs a legendary horse, right? Bill's horse wasn't just any old mare. Her name was Widowmaker, and she was the wildest Mustang in the West. Her coat was the color of dynamite and her spirit was just as explosive. No one could ride her. But Pecos Bill, being Pecos Bill, saw her as a challenge. He wrestled her for days, and finally, she gave in. From then on, they were an inseparable pair, the wildest cowboy and the wildest horse, tearing across the plains. Some folks say the Grand Canyon was carved out by one of Widowmaker's wild romps with Bill on her back. Pecos Bill's adventures got bigger and bigger. During a terrible drought that was turning Texas into a desert, Bill knew he had to do something. He rode Widowmaker all the way to California, lassoed a giant cyclone that was causing trouble over the Pacific, and dragged it all the way back to Texas. He rode that spinning tornado like it was a carnival ride, squeezing out all the rain until the rivers flowed again. That's how the Gulf of Mexico was formed, or so the story goes. He was a hero who could tame nature itself. Of course, a hero like Bill needs a love story. He fell for a woman as wild and wonderful as he was. Her name was Slewfoot Sue. She was a cowgirl who could ride anything, and she first caught Bill's eye when she was riding a giant catfish down the Rio Grande. It was love at first sight. Bill proposed, and for their wedding, Sue had just one request. She wanted to ride Widow. Bill warned her it was a bad idea, but Sue was stubborn. On their wedding day, she put on her big, bouncy wedding dress with a steel bustle and jumped on Widowmaker's back. The horse, not used to anyone but Bill, went crazy. She bucked Sue so high into the air that she flew right up to the moon, and because of the springy steel in her dress, every time she came down, she'd bounce right back up again. They say Pecos Bill was heartbroken. He tried to lasso her down, but she was just too high. And some say, on a clear night, if you look very closely, you can still see Slewfoot Sue bouncing on the moon. What happened to Pecos Bill in the end? Well, there are many stories. Some say his heart was broken after losing Sue, and he just faded away. But my favorite version is this. One day, he met a tourist from the city, all dressed up in fancy new cowboy gear, asking silly questions. The tourist bragged about his store-bought clothes and asked Bill if he was a real cowboy. Bill took one look at the fella and just laughed. He laughed so hard that he couldn't stop. He laughed himself right out of his boots, and, eventually, he laughed himself to death. It was a fitting end for a man who lived a life so big and so unbelievable, it could only be a tall tale. The story of Pecos Bill is more than just a funny yarn. It's a symbol of the spirit of the American Westa, idea that with enough grit, humor, and imagination, you can face any challenge, whether it's a drought, a wild horse, or even a tornado. These tales were told around campfires to entertain and inspire, creating a hero as vast and untamed as the landscape itself. So next time you see a tumbleweed roll by or hear the wind howl, think of Pecos Bill, the coyote-raised, tornado, ultimate cowboy of the Wild West. His legend reminds us that sometimes the best stories are the ones that are just a little too big to be true. Thanks for joining me on this wild ride through American folklore. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more legendary tales. See you next time.